Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, and we got a really fun episode for you guys this week because we are taking a look at the lucky Goldstar 3DO Alive II. And the interesting thing about this console is not what is inside of it, but what was intended to be put into that shell. Before we get too far involved, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below and hit like and subscribe. Definitely helps us out, and ring that notification bell. And if you feel so inclined, we have a Patreon link down there as well if you want to support the channel. But the 3DO Alive II is an extremely rare console. This is a variant only released in Korea, and there was two versions of it. One released by Goldstar, and one released by LG. Because Lucky Chemicals, yes it's a chemical company, and Goldstar, the industrial electronic company, merged together to create LG. So these consoles are normally shipped out with a Goldstar logo, but this one has the LG logo, making it exceedingly rare. But the really interesting thing about the Alive II, other than its rarity, is that this shell was never intended to have a 3DO in it. It was actually intended to have a 3DO M2 in it. And you'll see here, once we pop the lid and take a little bit of a closer look, everything is labeled in Korean because Korea was one of the major markets for the 3DO. You had Japan, you had North America, and Korea, they had their own versions of the 3DO because Goldstar was a licensee to the 3DO company to manufacture them, and Goldstar was a Korean company. But that's the fun thing about this console. As you'll see here, I put a 3DO game into it. It fits, of course it does, it's a disc, but this shell was intended to have the 3DO M2 inside of it. And it's really interesting because most of the 3DO M2 prototypes did get their shells used for different purposes. We were supposed to be putting a 3DO M2 game, as you'll see here, into the Alive II, turning it on and being able to play M2 as a released console. Obviously we know that never happened, but this is a really interesting piece of hardware. And it's something that I do have some experience with because when I worked at Burton Snowboards, I dealt with manufacturing and we had to have a lot of molds made for our goggles. And tool and die for molds are very expensive. You'll see here that prototype M2 is in the top right, and you'll see that the Alive II almost perfectly matches that same shape. And that's because you're talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a plastic mold made. Out of it is a metal mold, and you put the plastic into it, so it's no surprise that once the M2 was not a possibility for Goldstar, it became a regular 3DO. But you'll see here, if we take a look at the arcade board, granted this isn't the console variant, but if you look at just the shape in general, and you put that on top of the Alive II, you're going to really quickly realize that the arcade variant PCB from Konami really is just almost a reference design from the 3DO company. It fits within the boundaries of that shell perfectly, so no one really knows that there was ever a PCB in the Goldstar M2 prototype, or if it was just a blank case with some weight in it, but you can certainly see this would have worked. And you'll see here that it's extremely close to the photos we do have, which aren't many. They changed the LED light position, and that's not really hard in a mold. To make something move is not that big of a deal once the mold is made. And on the same side over here on the right with the open button, they've moved the light again. But short of that, this is 99% the exact same mold that would have been shown on the CES floors back in 1995 when the 3DO M2 was announced. And taking a look around the front, you're going to see there's one controller port here and nothing else. But if we take a look at this photo, and it's the best I had, it looks like they were going for 2 memory card slots and 1 controller. So it seems like Goldstar at least is still planning on going with the daisy chain design versus Panasonic having 2 controller ports. Around the side, really not much to look at. It seems like these could have been made into expansion doors because those cutouts there make it seem like the console was able to open up, but honestly outside of some different texture on the plastic, there really isn't much to see over there. But it's nice just to take a look at a really rare console. But moving around the back is the biggest disappointment. This only has composite video. It does not have an S-video port. The original 3DO FC1 did. Strangely, it has a DC out with 4 amps on it. That's kind of confusing to me, but I'm not sure what it was used for. An expansion port and a power port in. So really the back is basic. But taking a look at the bottom is where we get some really interesting info, because this console was released in November 1996, and the Goldstar models came a few months before that. Up here you just have a little bit of the data on the model number and what type of electricity it uses, but the interesting thing is, in October 1995, Goldstar was still a licensee to make 3DO M2s, and that's why they had their own design for a shell, just like they did with the original 3DO. But in January of 1997, Panasonic or Matsushita buys the 3DO M2 technology from 3DO, meaning Goldstar can't release one anymore. And then in September 1997, Panasonic cancels the whole thing and breaks all of our, mine included, hearts. And you'll see here, based on the release dates of the arcade games, Tobe Polystars and Total Vice releasing in 1997 in the spring would have been some of the original launch games for the 3DO M2. But why did Lucky Goldstar or Goldstar make another 3DO in this shell? It's because they couldn't use the shell for the M2, so they had to put something into it and recoup that investment, so they relaunched the 3DO in Korea as a newer, different looking model. But really, outside of the plastic shell, it's always fun to take a look to see what's inside of these things. So through the magic of editing, these screws were a pain in the butt. I'm able to pop them out. It was missing one. Archive 3DO, where's that fourth screw? And if you turn it around carefully and pop the top off, we're going to see inside of the Alive II system. And honestly, it's not that much different than a regular 3DO outside of the FC1 or the original Goldstar model with that slot loading tray. Once you remove the screws on this little RF shield right here made of metal, we're going to be able to see a little bit more of the board. I did not remove the laser assembly because it's held in by 4 screws because it has been repaired, but underneath that there's just going to be the standard 3DO chips. But just taking a look around the board, there's not a lot to see. Like I said, it is just a 3DO. A few 3DO branded chips. We have a Sony one in there. We have our expansion port, and then we have our video power supply and a little coin cell battery down at the bottom left and a header, which I'm not exactly sure what the intent was. But you can see here on the plastic, that was the area that would have been cut out to hold those 2 memory card slots had it been a 3DO M2 versus an M2. And probably should change that battery eventually. It's marked as Sanyo, so I'm assuming it's original. But you'll see here again as we put that board over top, and it's a little bit of a strange camera angle, outside of a tiny bit of a fit issue for that power supply, in either configuration, this board fits in the shell. So this is obviously where it was supposed to be, a 3DO M2. And controller-wise, it's just a standard Goldstar controller, but it is a variant. They made the buttons smaller and the D-pad larger, and I would say that out of the two, I prefer the Panasonic controller much more. It just has a lot better feel in the hand. But that is the story of the Goldstar or LG Alive II 3DO. Basically, even though Next Generation magazine said that Panasonic bought the exclusive rights to the M2 technology in January 1997, it was really early in 96 that 3DO was starting to shop this hardware around. They offered it to Sega and almost made a deal that fell apart in the 11th hour, and I will do a video on that moving forward. If you guys are interested, leave a comment below if you want to see it. But obviously Goldstar, being a licensee to the original 3DO, would have been offered the exclusive rights as well. So the writing was on the wall that 3DO was not going to be allowing multiple companies to make 3DO M2s. They wanted one company to buy the rights. Goldstar, knowing they weren't going to be that company, needed something to put in the shell. Because like I said, I have experience in tool and die and manufacturing only on the buying side, and something like this is multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to get made. So you're not going to waste it, you're going to do something with it. But I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It helps us out. If you have any questions, leave them below, and I'll do my best to answer each and every one of them. Short of that, we'll have videos on Sunday and Tuesday as well, and we'll see you guys next Friday. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.